Are you ready to descend into the murky, scary, evil world of the dumbass opening? Warning, the following footage contains scenes which some viewers may find upsetting. Those of a sensitive disposition are advised to look away now. Right, are you ready for this? Dumbass Openings, Part 4. Okay. This is an absolute beauty. And this is a brilliant dumbass opening played by Black, who practically manages to lose the game on the second move. Okay, and this is brilliant. So I'll just go straight into it. This guy's rated nearly 1350. Okay, so you should be out of complete dumbass territory by that point, I would say, anyway. But clearly he's not, or he's just having a bad day, or whatever. So, e4, e5. There's nothing unusual so far. And your friendly chess commentator decides to go for the Danish gambit. So I play the centre game with d4. Now, if you had to lose a chess game as quickly as possible, I don't think there's a better way to do that than with the move that my opponent next played. Okay, see if you can. What are your candidate moves? What would you play in this situation? In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up the Explorer, and I'm going to see if any decent chess player has ever played the move that my opponent played. Yes, one. This has happened in one master... No, it hasn't. 6 games. 6 games. The move f6 was played. And this has been won mainly by white. Now, this isn't actually the main blunder. Okay, so let's go back to the original game. Okay, so my opponent now plays f6. So he's broken Ben Feingold's rule of never move, never play f6. Don't move the forget about it pawn. That's what f means, right? This pawn is guarding and blocking this diagonal towards your king. And guess what? Okay? Guess who's lurking? Guess who's ready to jump in and take advantage? So this isn't the worst blunder, actually. So I capture the pawn on e5 because I see this. Okay, this is the blunder. Recaptures. F takes e5, and he's gone. Yeah. I love. I don't know if any of you follow Chess Talk with Jitendra Advani. He's brilliant. I love it. I love his voice. If your opponent captures the pawn, he is gone. I love it. And great commentator. You should definitely follow Chess Talk. Anyway, so obviously now Queen h5. So now we are in kind of wayward queen territory. Okay, Queen h5 with check, and also hitting this pawn here, right? And there are only 2 options. Either the king moves to e7, or you push the pawn. Which would you do? Okay. Which would you do if you're a dumbass? g6. Queen takes e5. Check. And look. Forking the rook. That rook is well and truly forked. Okay, blocks with the queen. I grab the rook. Knight comes out now, which is interesting. Because, I mean, obviously the knight was under threat there on g8, and the knight's also adding a second defender on this pawn. Interesting move. I now play bishop to h6, so I've now got 2 attackers on this bishop. So the queen cannot abandon the bishop because I'll just grab the bishop with check. It would actually be checkmate. So let's say, you know, queen went here or here, then queen takes bishop would be mate. So the queen grabs the pawn now on e4 after thinking for a while. And I simply block with my knight. I saw that one coming. Now the queen comes over here with check. And that's interesting because the queen's also defending the bishop there on f8. So I simply develop my knight, and I know that the queen cannot capture on b2, right? Because queen takes bishop. Okay, so in true dumbass spirit, my opponent decides to block the defense of his bishop by pushing the d6 pawn, the d pawn to d6, which means the queen is no longer defending this bishop. So I can now go in and grab the bishop with check. There's only one legal move, king has to go there. Check again on f7. Don't have to grab the knight straight away because there's only actually two moves here. The king can either go to d8, in which case I'll capture the knight with check, or he has to go to c6. In this instance, he goes to c6. So now I just snatched the knight, and I'm up 3 pieces basically. I've got a rook and a rook, a bishop, and a knight for my trouble. Bishop flies out to g4. Not quite sure what that's going to achieve. Now I can now play, because my queen's here defending this square, I can play my knight that was blocking did block the check. I can move that now to d4 with check. King comes to here, knight to b3 check, and we're starting to run out of squares very seriously. My opponent here, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's hard to know what's going through his head at all in this game, but queen takes knight, I don't know, and then he resigns. Okay, so we'll look at this a little bit. So from this point, what I would do is I would highlight all the squares that my knights are covering, okay, and that my queen's covering. So, and of course this bishop is covering these squares. So the king right now in check, yes, capturing the attacker is one option if you feel like trading a queen for a knight, or the king's got to go here. This knight is actually pinned, this one here. So, I mean, if the king went there, what I would love to do would be to play knight to there, but I wouldn't get away with it because it's illegal. Also, I can't castle. I'd love to castle in this situation. But, you know, it's a walk in the park, really, for black now. So let's say, you know, the king moved here. I've got bishop to there. Gives the king still only 2 squares. But it's going to get very bad very quickly. Even like, let's say, you know, king there. I've got even bishop here with threats of discoveries and checks and all kinds of horrible stuff. So it is an absolutely terrible position to be in. But let's go back to the beginning of the game. And if you are ever faced with the center game, what should you do? Well, let's consult chess.com's Explorer. Okay, e takes d4 has been played 2,300 times by masters. Knight to c6 has been played 921 times, and then there's d6. Right. The issue with d6, obviously, you know, if you play d6 and pawn takes, you've got queen takes, and then king has to recapture because there's no other legal move, and then black has lost castling rights. So that's not ideal. But by far the most popular move is to capture there and put the question back to white. And you might have the Danish gambit, which I'm having fun with at the moment. Gone back to one of my first loves, really. Do love the Danish. With the idea of capturing there, and if you can go full Danish style. Okay. But yeah, so if you're ever faced with this, just take the pawn. Take the first pawn. You may not want to continue gobbling up pawns. You should generally smell a rat if your opponent starts offering you pawns in the opening, because every move that you take to capture a pawn means a move that you are not developing. So here, black has 0 development, and look at white, 2 bishops straight out in the center. So there you go. But so this idea from my opponent, I mean, that's a mistake. At this point, white is almost 2 pawns ahead in ratings, like 1.75 plus 1.75 to white. And at this point, it's the game's practically over because there's nothing, you know, to stop this, and there's only 2 moves, only 2 legal moves. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is this dumbass and I are playing a 30-minute rapid game. 30 minutes, half an hour each, so it could take up to an hour to play the game, right? I play e4, he plays e5, both of us play in 0.1 seconds. Okay, that's move 1. 0.1 seconds for me, 0.1 seconds for him. I bang out d4 in 1.8 seconds, and he takes 5 seconds, 5.7 seconds to do this. Okay, then I have a think, because it's a bit unusual, and I have to look at this and figure out, well, okay, if takes and takes, surely I've got queen h5 because he's moved the forget about it pawn. Oh yes, he has. And surely that's a fork. Oh yes, it is, right? So 11 seconds on my part, didn't take too much calculation. And then 4.5 seconds for this complete blunder. I mean, the thing is, he's not going to hang on to this pawn anyway. Why capture with the pawn? He's much better off, for example, develop his knight, I capture. Look at that, that's a perfectly fine situation. Yes, I'm a pawn up, but he's got the development lead, right? So always be ready in openings to think, I can kind of play this gambit style, because you have an option. So what is a gambit? A gambit is where you offer material to your opponent which they have to spend their turns capturing, right? But in return for that, what you get is advanced development, okay? And that's exactly what you're seeing here in Black's favour, right? Black has given up a pawn, but now he could, for example, he could develop a bishop. Let's say, bishop comes out, knight comes out, bang, he's castled, right? He's got a rook on a semi-open file. He's taking advantage of the fact that the f-pawn's off the board. So there you go. One particularly elegant and beautiful example of the dumbass opening, and the key thing is that the guy rushed it. He rushed the opening. You don't need to do that. You need to take more time, and I think this is something I see a lot with lower rated players, is just like, oh, I always play this. I had a lesson with somebody yesterday who said, I always play this, right? And the game that we were working through, we were actually playing kind of live against a bot. My student just knocked out the first 3 moves and actually lost the pawn because he didn't even look at what the bot was playing, didn't even look at what his opponent did, and didn't ask the question, why did he do that? But then what we did with that was we said, actually, let's turn this to our advantage, let's get castled and so on, and turn it into a gambit situation. Okay, so always keep that in mind. When something surprising happens, can you turn it around and get your development enhanced, even if you've blundered a pawn, okay, in the beginning? But what you mustn't do is this, okay? Just never do that, never do that. And there's a reason why this pawn is called the forget about it pawn, okay, which my opponent here learned to his cost. But there you go. Interesting lesson, I hope. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon.